Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another webinar with Muslim Resource Services, where we try to bring you information and resources to help uplift the community. Here with us today is Sheikh Yassir Fazaga, who is the Director of the Mental Health and Support at MIC in Masjid al-Salam. Sheikh Yassir Fazaga is originally from Eritrea. Okay, he didn't correct me. I'm going to keep going. In Northeast Africa, he holds a bachelor's degree in Islamic and Arabic sciences from Imam Saud University, the Virginia, USA branch, and a master's degree in marriage and family therapy from the California State University at Long Beach. Also a second master's in Middle Eastern Studies from the University of Texas, Austin. He also finished his certification requirements to become a certified sex educator and therapist. He focuses on enlightening the community in the fields of psychology, sexology, parenting, and relationships. He is married with 2 children, and we are happy to have him here in Shelby County. Welcome, Sheikh Yassir Fazaga. How are you today?
Alhamdulillah, I'm doing good. And Sister Hala and Sister Sabina, thank you for having me and appreciate what you do. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless your efforts, Ya Rabbal Alam.
Jazakallah khair, thank you. Tell us more about yourself. When did you first get interested in mental health?
Good question. So I was an imam, and I actually became an imam at an early age, which is typical back in the days, not a long time ago, but it was typical back in the days that, you know what, people who studied and came back and, you know, they had some fluency in English would, you know, the community would see them as, you know, potential imams. So I thought I would just be an imam for like a year until they get a proper imam. And then, you know, I'll go and do my own thing. And well, it's 25 years later. But what has happened is, as an imam, I was getting a lot of people coming asking for help, you know, families with children having issues with their kids, couples having issues with with one another. And I just felt I was absolutely crippled, ill-equipped. There was no way with what I studied and knew and my age, there was just no way that I was going to help these families. So I applied for a program because I said, these people are coming no matter what. These people just keep coming. They just want to talk to the imam. And I thought I might as well equip myself with the proper tools to properly help these families. And I tell you, I made very few good decisions in my life, but this would have to be like one of the best decisions that I have made to go and pursue this. And that's how I became interested in the field.
Oh, wow. So do you feel like there is a stigma that goes on in the community about mental health and getting that help that is needed?
And the stigma is not just in the Muslim community. Generally speaking, mental health has always been a stigma, and there is a long history as to why that is. However, specifically to religious communities, and the Muslim community being one, there is the understanding that if you are a good Muslim, you do your prayers, somehow you're not supposed to suffer from any mental health related issues. And what that does is that and not only that, but this is a myth that we keep, you know, pushing in the community. So if I were to go to the masjid and tell somebody that I'm depressed, and they tell me, why don't you pray? Why don't you read the Quran? This is what we call the blame the victim theology. And that is, if you have mental health related issues, somehow that is because of your weak iman. Now remember, and for all of the listeners out there, it is very possible that a believer can be very tender in their heart and yet troubled in their mind. That does not take away from the fact that they're good Muslims, practicing Muslims, really doing their best Muslims. They come to the masjid, they read their Quran, they might even have memorized the Quran. But yet, nowhere in Islam does it say that because you are a good Muslim, you are inherently protected from having mental health issues. That is not part of our deen. Keeping in mind that the teachings of the Quran give people what I like to refer to as mental resilience, which is really part of the teachings of the deen. But if it happens to be that a believer is going through some of these issues, that does not take away from their belief. And by the way, this notion, this myth is not only practically wrong, but it's also theologically flawed. For example, in the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says, ما أصاب المؤمن من هم ولا حزن ولا نصب ولا وصب, that anytime a believer, faces issues such as grief, such as anxiety, such as weariness, such as worriness. And here the Prophet, peace be upon him, is talking about a believer facing these issues. The idea of ham and hazan, anxiety and grief. And he didn't say a believer does not go through this. He said that anytime a believer goes through this, then it becomes, a means of expiation to, his or her sins or her, poor choices. So the issue that we are looking at is the stigma has a long history, not just in the Muslim community, but in all the religious communities. For example, historically speaking, mental health was attributed to one of two things. Either God is mad at you, or the gods, depending on which religious group we're talking about, the gods or God is upset with you, or you're being possessed by the demons. And when it comes to demon possession, in fact, some argue that the very first surgical procedure that people have known is a procedure known as trephination, sometimes pronounced as trepanation. And what it is that they would make a hole in the skull of the individual to make room for the evil spirits and for the demons to leave you. And the way that they did it now is the options are, if you're going through mental health related issues, either it must be your fault because of your weak belief, God is punishing you, or the evil spirits have possessed you. And that's very problematic. And nobody would want to be seen in that light. And that is where the taboo, for stigmatization of mental health comes in. And as clinicians, as professionals in the field, every time and any time that we speak about mental health issues, we usually have like 4 main points that we want to get across to people. And number one is what you just started with, and that is to fight the stigma. The problem with the stigma is that it stops a lot of people who are in need, desperate need of that help, from getting the help that they need. Because somebody has created that stigma, and what has happened is, as a result, people do not get that type of help. People also would engage in denial. Families would start protecting their reputation by shielding that individual from the public, not by getting them help, but you know what? We don't want people to be talking about 1, 2, and 3. And that is problematic. And by the way, when it comes to the whole idea of the demon possession, the Quran actually documents that notion or that belief. In Surah Hud, when Hud alayhi salam comes and he speaks to his people, the people rejected him, and they say to him that we believe that our gods are upset with you and they must have done something to you. Remember, the Quran is documenting the event. The Quran is not approving of what these people are saying. So fighting the stigma is very important. And that is why what you are doing right now is so unbelievably important, because that is how you fight the stigma. You talk about it, you bring it out in the open. And we tell people, look, it's very common that good believing Muslims, men and women, can actually face mental health related issues. Does not make you a weak individual, does not necessarily make you a weak Muslim. Number 2 is educate people. I'm sorry, were you about to say something?
No, go ahead. Continue. I wanted to ask you a question too, towards that. For example, but I do want you to finish your list. But for example, let's say we see someone is going through something. Of course, we are not medical professionals, but we know that they are struggling mentally with a problem or an issue. I really would like to know what's the best way to approach that person and try to get them help. Because, go ahead.
Yeah. And that's a great question. So let me finish that list quickly. Fight the stigma. Number two is educate the public about mental health related issues, simply because ignorance breeds fear. And the more people know, the more better enlightened they become. You know, their ability to fight stigma and that understanding calms people down. A good example would be the coronavirus. Remember that initially what was happening with the people, that panic that was taking place. And the more people know, people at that point, they relax more and more. Relax, but just don't become irresponsible. Okay. Number three would be for us to promote policies and procedures that would actually help people with mental health issues, be it at the state level, at the local level, at the federal level. We want to promote these types of policies because that is going to be very important to them. Okay, not only to support them, but also the last point is to support the loved ones who are taking care of somebody who is going through mental health related issues. And anybody who has experienced what that feels like to have a loved one that lives with you is going through this, in Arabic, they have a saying, they say, مخاوي المريض مريض, one who is the one who is taking care of a person who is ill or sick or not doing well, that themselves, they eventually are going to need the help that they need. But people, have a tendency that they do not see this individual as somebody who is in need of help. Case in point, as therapists, we are actually highly recommended that we have our own therapy as well. Because as you see the issues that you deal with, ultimately and eventually, by the end of the day, we're human beings as well. So we would want to be able to talk, to somebody. So that's also what we do. But to your question, the last point, which is, what do I do if I find out, a loved one is going through mental health related issues? Okay, depending on what the issue is, of course. But generally speaking, these are some guidelines. Number one, give a lot of support and encouragement without applying pressure. Now, what does that mean? See, sometimes the support, just for somebody to come and say, look, I've noticed 1, 2, and 3, that is our way of conveying care, that you're actually paying attention, that you are actually emotionally attuned to those who are around you. Hey, listen, lately I have been noticing 1, 2, and 3. What's going on? The idea of just knowing that somebody cares, somebody that notices, is so unbelievably important. Please do not undermine these types of questions, or what we call, we want to bring back the sunnah of inquiring of each other, how are you doing? And when I say, how are you doing? We're not just talking about how are you in terms of physically doing, or, academically doing, or professionally doing, or anything like that. By the end of the day, like, how are you doing? Brothers tell me a story. I remember I gave a khutbah about just the idea of asking people, how are you doing? And he said that, I'm glad that, how are you doing? Oh, business is good. I'm glad to hear that your business is good, but how are you doing? Oh, the kids are fine. I'm glad the kids are fine, but how are you doing? Being healthy, being working out. That's really good, but how are you doing? And people just break down at that point. And so what's going on? Said that nobody asks me, how are you doing? And when we ask, how are you doing? We want to make sure that we create a safe space for that person to tell us, how are they doing? Remember that our feelings and our thoughts are places where people can only come in by invitation. I don't know what's going through your head, through your heart right now. You don't know what's going through my head or heart right now, but it's only by invitation that I bring people to my thoughts and to my feelings. Well, in order to do that, I need to feel safe, that I can trust this individual, that they're not rushing me, that they're giving me the space, and also they're not going to use this information against me one day. They're not going to jump to conclusions, but rather we just want to make sure that we make people feel safe in our presence, that we are here to listen, We don't claim that we have a solution for everything that they share with us, but the fact that we can lend people our ears is a big, huge deal. Number two, we also want to look into their functionality. How are they doing? In terms of when do we recommend professional intervention? So let's say I share with you that I'm being very depressed. My classes are not going well. My boss the other day brought it up to my attention that I'm not focusing. My numbers are going down. Well, at that point, what you want to do is that you want to say, look, this is like, it sounds very serious. What we want to do is, well, have you considered seeing a therapist? Have you considered seeking help? And it would be best that we can actually become the liaison between those who are in need of help and the professionals. And I love how you started the program. You said that we are here trying to bring to you resources that you need. I can't really refer to people to resources if I don't know what the resources are. That's why part of the plan, inshallah, is to help the masajid, the different Islamic centers, to create a resource list. When I'm talking about a resource list, I'm talking beyond the halal meat place. I'm talking about, beyond the halal restaurant place. I'm talking about, like, if we have something like this, where do we send the people? And that's going to be very, very crucial. And
that is what Muslim Resources is. We are a hub of resources that have been getting together with all the mosques, have been looking for things in Shelby County that can help people with financial needs, psychological needs, whatever the case may be. So, and we have been meeting with all the mosques and Muslim organizations here in Shelby County, and inshallah, we are planning on implementing this hopefully across the state.
Beautiful. And also, part of the stigma, people don't seek out professional service because, especially in the Muslim community, and that's a big thing, is the idea of cultural competency, cultural barriers, language barriers, generational barriers. These are all issues that are so crucial and important in a counseling setting. So if I were to see somebody like Hala or any of the sisters here, I'm not going to jump to conclusion about your hijab. I immediately know what that means. Me knowing that you're a Muslim woman, I immediately, there is an unverbalized culture that, we know how to interact with one another. That competency is so unbelievably crucial in a therapeutic setting. They have a saying, if we speak to people in a language that they understand, we go to their heads. If we speak to them in a language that they know, we go to their hearts. And language here is not in reference to just the alphabets and the vocabulary. It is a lot more is shared when people have that commonality between them. So this is not to say anything negative about the resources out there, but when there is no cultural competency, seeking the resource becomes actually difficult. So one of the first questions I ask my clients when they see me is, have you reached out to somebody else before? I say, no, I have not. When they say, no, I have not, because I was afraid that people will not understand what's going on. Or they would say, yes, I did, but I was misunderstood. Not because the other people are not good or they're not smart or they don't have credentials. Culture is one of these things. You either know it, you don't know it. And so what we hope for is to create as big of a resource as possible in our own areas, so that when we send our community members to, we're actually sending them to places where people have that cultural competence.
Okay. Do you feel that there is a connection between mental health and physical health?
Oh, by all means. So when we meet clients, so one of the first things that I will ask is, when was your last physical? And they would say, oh, I haven't had a physical in such a long time. Because what we do is that we want to rule out is the physical, psychological state that they are in right now, is it caused by something that's medical, or is it something else? Let me give you an example. So usually, remember, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a medical doctor, but this would just be a good example to share. The idea of thyroids, okay? That's one of the glands that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when it's not functioning as well, it can actually mimic the symptoms of depression. So people can come and say, like, I'm so tired, I'm just finding myself to be sleepy most of the time, they'll be gaining weight, and I just can't really focus. I find it difficult to remember things, and I'm just like easily bored. And so somebody might just immediately jump into, oh, that just sounds like depression. So what we do is say, look, I need you to get a physical checkup, because I want to make sure that I rule out all of these things. So that's the first thing that we do. Also, it is very understandable that when people are in physical pain, it impacts their psychological well-being as well. I had a client, she had what we call, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant her speedy recovery, and all the people who are here with us and our loved ones, Ya Rabbal Alameen, a speedy recovery if somebody is not feeling well.
Ameen.
But what we see here is that, so she's diagnosed with cancer, she's on this medication, and what happened is that she said that a side effect of the medication is just a lot of chronic pain. And what happens when you are in the state of pain, you're easily irritated. Your tolerance for irritants is very minimal at that point. You tend to want to save your energy to only for big things that cannot wait. So now what we see here is that our physical well-being is impacting our psychological well-being as well. But there is no doubt that there is this very direct relationship between our physical well-being and our psychological well-being. One feeds into the other. The better this is, potentially, the better the other one becomes as well.
Thank you. I would like to encourage everybody, please drop your questions in the chat box. We have one right now. Sheikh Fazaga, how can we best support women suffering with postpartum? What can a Muslim institution do better to support these women?
Yeah. So postpartum is in reference to people, to women specifically, after delivering a baby, they go through a period of depression. Please remember that whenever we speak about social sciences and we speak about psychology, because psychology is part of social science, is that what happens is it is based on observation. So not every woman that went through pregnancy and delivery must go through postpartum depression. That is not a must. But we're not surprised to see that women who go through delivery and pregnancy, they may go through postpartum depression. So what we want to do is, I'm not sure who the we here is, but we want to offer support, okay? That support includes, like I said, the availability of the resources where people can actually see a professional. And for those who are around, there is something about depression. See, sometimes when we speak about depression, is that there is this urge that we feel, if I can just encourage somebody enough, if I can just motivate them enough to get them out of this depression. Well, you do that if somebody's feeling down, okay? Now remember, I'm not saying don't be encouraging. Just make sure that your encouraging is not translated into pressure, okay? Because pressure for somebody who is depressed is not really something that a depressed person wants to go through. There is a lot of guilt that is associated with depression, especially for women who go through postpartum. So they just feel guilty. I'm like, I am not a good mom. It's like, why am I not happy? I just had a baby. It's like, I just don't feel that happiness anymore. And there is just so much guilt that comes with this. And usually guilt, so there is a certain type of guilt that is actually good, because guilt tells me that conscience, is alive. So what you see here is that I feel guilty towards my behavior, but then the guilt becomes deeper and deeper. And now the feelings are not just towards the behavior. Now the feelings are towards the self. I am not good, feelings of shame, feeling of doubts, and that just creates that depression, which makes me feel guilty more, which makes me have a more negative look into myself, which increases my depression. And now we have got this cycle that just take place. So please remember, and I love this about our community, where you would hear a sister just had a baby, so the sisters would take turn. I will cook on this day, you cook on that day. So now that there is that relief from physical work, the need to cook and attend to the kids, I will babysit the other kids. So the point is to make sure that we provide as much of physical comfort as possible. Like I said, number 3, we want to be that liaison between us and the professionals. Look, girl, it is very possible. You might be going through postpartum depression. A lot of women go through it. And you know what? These things are treatable. I have heard about 1213. I know this counselor. I know about this therapist. Why don't we check them out and see what can be done? When we have these types of talks, you normalize, you validate the people who are going through these issues. We do not practice the blame the victim theology, that why are you not grateful for the blessings of Allah? You just had a baby. Do you know how many women out there are hoping to be in your position? And look at you, miserable soul, you are complaining. I mean, that kind of speech, it may sound religious. There is nothing religious about it, but you can be quoting all. Making people feel guilty this way is not a good strategy. Blame the victim theology is the worst type of expression of religiosity. We don't want to do that. What we want to do is that we want to offer that support, encouragement, be the liaison.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you. We've got a couple of more questions for you. If someone needs personal help directly and has been struggling and battling depression for 5 years almost now, on and off, can they contact you, or do you have anything you would like to say to them? We'll be putting the link again to your email and your phone number in the chat box again. But is there anything you would like to say to that?
Yeah, number one is, whoever they are, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you speedy recovery, Ya Rabbal Alameen. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ease your pain. Depression is not a fun, phase to be going through in your life. And it can really suck the life out of you. It can exhaust you. And those of us who have experienced depression, they know this. And I honestly believe that by virtue of being humans, we must have experienced depression at some point of our life. That is just part of being human. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. Indeed, man was created in a state of trial and toil. This idea of difficulty, that's just part of life. So part of the way that the Quran builds that mental resilience is that believers are invited to make peace with imperfection. That's just a must do at this point. We must make peace with imperfection. But in any case, so just going back to the depression. Remember, depression is treatable. And not only with depression, but with mental health related issues, there are 2 ways of treatment. Number 1 is going the therapy route, which is what we do. I'm a psychotherapist, which means that I listen to people, I talk to people, and I try to help them, navigate their way through their problems. This is what we call talk therapy. And sometimes, depending on how functional the individual is, we may recommend that they see a psychiatrist to see if medication can be used to help them further. And I know that a lot of people ask me these questions about, I'll just give a khutbah about depression. And as soon as I leave, at least I would say that at least a good number, 10 to 15 people would say, my husband, my wife is on Prozac. The doctor recommended this. Is that okay? So I would say, remember, medications are not necessarily a bad idea, okay? Especially when a person's functionality is deficient. By functionality, I mean it's impacting their sleep, it's impacting their appetite, they are losing weight or gaining weight, they're finding it difficult to fall asleep or stay asleep, they are finding it difficult to stop eating or initiate eating, their social, academic, professional life. They're socially isolated. So if the burden is too heavy to be carried by yourself, we refer to that as this is somebody that is moderately depressed. So there is mild, moderate, and severe. So high, moderate, and severe, we absolutely, recommend highly to people that they see a psychiatrist. So a psychiatrist is a medical doctor that deals with mental health related issues, and they would give you medication. But remember that medications on their own do not necessarily solve the problem. What is best, that is supported by research, is that people actually do a combination of both medication as well as therapy. That would be best. I think there was also another part of the question is, can I help? So remember that because of the setting that we have, what we usually do, number one, I recommend to people to connect with local resources. I really, really believe that when you have somebody who is local that you can have a relationship with, I think that is just absolutely, absolutely best. So I would recommend to this person and to all the people here, and that would be best if you can meet and if you can establish a relationship with somebody who is local. Why do I say that? A person who is local, they know all the local resources that can actually add value to what it is that they're trying to help you with. So if we have a listener from New York right now, and if they say, can I talk to you? I would gladly talk to them. Only issue is I don't know what type of resources are available for them locally. However, a person who is local, they would be aware of these local resources, which actually can be absolutely a lot more beneficial than talking to me.
Thank you.
In addition to that, also because this is a nonprofit setting, usually the nonprofit setting, our services are based on first come, first serve, which means that the consistency in the appointments, they become a little bit challenging because there is a calendar, people fill the calendar. If the calendar is full, then you know what? We miss out on the consistency. So our services are short-term consultations at this point.
Thank you. We have another question for you. Are there personality traits that make one incline towards depression or other mental illness?
That's a really, really good question. And what I think the person is asking about susceptibility, قابلية. Some people are more susceptible than others. We would say, yes, generally speaking, that is the case. It does not translate into saying that some people are absolutely immune from getting depression. But what happens is, it's like anxiety. Are some people, certain personalities are more, this is just me making up stuff right now, by the way. Some personalities are more likely to develop anxiety, and some personalities are more likely to develop depression. Remember, it doesn't say anything about the people. It's just that, people who are overly sensitive, for example, the idea of depression is more likely. If they were to get something, it would most likely be depression. The people who are perfectionists, for example, they're more likely to go through that. Remember, when I say perfectionist, there are two types of perfectionists. There is perfectionist that is the result of feeling insecure. And then there is a perfectionist that's like a genuine appreciation for excellence and for like a genuine appreciation for excellence and things just to be done well. That is healthy type of perfectionism. But perfectionism that is a result of feeling insecure, that can potentially generate anxiety, okay? And that becomes unhealthy. So the short answer is yes. It doesn't mean that some people are weaker than others. It just means that some people are more susceptible. So for example, we say, if you are an African-American male, pay attention to 1, 2, and 3, because it seems like these types of diseases, medical diseases, are more rampant in your community. If you're Middle Eastern, pay attention to 1, 2, and 3. If you're Caucasian, that does not say anything other than some people are more susceptible than others.
Jazakallah khair, and thank you for all you do. Would you like to leave us with any last thoughts? And does anyone have any other questions they would like to ask?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much. It's such important information, and you really put it in understandable terms. But sometimes, especially with depression, it's hard to understand when something is normal and then something gets to the point of needing help. And I know you've said it, you said it in some of what you were saying early on, but if you can repeat it, so we have that understanding.
Yeah. So when we speak about depression, unlike other mental illnesses, what we look for is a set of symptoms and a duration of how long do these symptoms last. So with depression, generally speaking, we are looking for change in eating habits, a person eating too much or eating too little, gaining weight or losing weight. Losing weight that's not planned, gaining weight that's just not like them. A change in sleeping habits, difficulty falling asleep or difficulty staying asleep. Low energy, shoulders are dropped, head is down, feeling tired even though they have not really done any kind of work. Social isolation, that's a big, huge one. They're not returning the call. They're no longer playing with the other kids. They really used to come home and look forward to the weekend because they want to be on the PlayStation and get with the other kids. But now all he or she does is they just go up to their room and they just stay there, like this social isolation, not finding pleasure in things that were pleasurable in the past. That is another one, okay? A person's ability to take care of themselves is going down. It's been 3 days, they have not taken a shower. That is so unlike them. She's not brushing her hair anymore. I have to remind him several times that he needs to brush his teeth, for example. So now what I see is that personal hygiene is suffering as a result of this. People just a sense of hopelessness in the way that they talk, that is there as well. And also there is this notion of people speaking about death, a very pessimistic look into life. And also very important is people having very little tolerance for irritants, that they're easily irritated. Their temper is very short. Okay. And as I am talking, please fight the urge to psychoanalyze and diagnose your family members. Okay. As we talk, the tendency is that people say, oh my God, I know exactly what's going on with that person. So please, I want you to fight that. I want you to fight that urge. So now, these are the symptoms. Well, if the person has had these symptoms and there is no life-changing circumstance or event that took place in their life, then we would say that if they have had these symptoms for 2 weeks, we would say this person is clinically depressed. What does that mean? Did the person go through depression? I mean, through divorce, for example. Did they just fail an exam? Did they lose a relationship? Did they have a marriage proposal that did not work out? Did they were just diagnosed with a serious illness, for example? Did they lose a loved one? Somebody close to them passed away. What happened? Do they have a relationship that just came to an end abruptly? Was this kid looking forward to getting accepted into this school, but they didn't get into it? So what we're looking for is some kind of an event that took place that would explain to us that this reaction is natural. So if you lost a loved one, yeah, you'd be down. You don't want to eat. Sleeping becomes difficult. You have low energy. You lose hope. You want to socially isolate yourself. It is understandable at that point. So it becomes an issue in the absence of these types of events. And for that long, we would say something is going on at that point.
And what are a couple of ways that a person can improve their overall mental health?
That's a really, really good question. I love that. See, sometimes what makes this difficult is that the focus usually is on what's wrong rather than, okay, look, if it's good, how do I make it better? Okay. So remember that mental health is actually, it falls under personal responsibility, which means that the more you give it, the more you get out of it. And we would say that it is the same thing that you do with your overall health. Okay. So what do you want to do? If you want to get physically fit, what do? You exercise, you eat healthy, you sleep well, you don't overeat, you stop smoking, like good habits, like developing good habits. Same thing with keeping good mental health. It would have to be a development of good habits. So, for example, in the Muslim community, having a good relationship with Allah is definitely a must. When there is, the idea of congruency between what we believe our principles are and our behavior is the same, there is a sense of satisfaction that we feel that, alhamdulillah, I am living my principles. That actually makes us feel good. Surrounding yourself with good people, paying attention to the power of your thoughts. That is a must. Okay, making sure that you pay attention to the type of language that you use, because the language, what that's saying, pay attention to your thoughts become your words, pay attention to your words become your actions, pay attention to your actions become your habit, pay attention to your habits, that becomes your character. Okay, so now what happens is that we want to make sure that we pay attention to these, to this progression that's taken place. Also practicing, and this is really, really important. There was a research done to predict people's well-being, and two things. So the research found out that people's well-being, the best predictor for it was healthy relationships. Healthy relationships are so unbelievably important, especially healthy, close relationships. The healthier our relationships are, that is going to reflect positively on our mental well-being. And the second point, this is really important. They say that the shortest distance between us and happiness is gratitude. The idea of just being in a state of gratitude, shukr, where Allah says, لَقَدْ آتَيْنَا لُقْمَانَ الْحِكْمَةَ أَنِ اشْكُرْ لِلَّهِ. Indeed, we have endowed wisdom upon Luqman. Be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The shortest distance, the quickest way to achieve happiness is to practice gratitude. There was a research done, gratitude to Allah, gratitude to those who are around you. They got a group of participants, 200 people, and they said to 200 people, to 100 of the people, they said, this weekend, we want you to think about 10 people that have done you a favor, and we want you to write each one of them a letter of appreciation, a letter of gratitude. What is it that they have done to you, and what is it that you want to say to them? And to the other group of people, they just said, we will see you next weekend. Okay? And when the people came back, the people who reported that they were thinking of a letter to write to somebody, they came back and they reported a much happier state than what they reported the week before. The other people, their state did not really change. But what that people took the time to say, man, I need my fourth grade teacher. They were so good to me. You know what, Miss Heather, she was so nice. And they just go back in memory and they start writing. And then they remember a professor, maybe the local imam, maybe a family member, maybe and people just do that. And there was a sense of joy that they felt that, in the expression of gratitude, he said that there is just so much positivity that comes back. But here is the kicker, and I love Islam's approach to psychology. By the way, we're teaching a course on Islam and psychology right now, where Allah says, وَمَنْ يَشْكُرْ فَإِنَّمَا يَشْكُرُ لِنَفْسِهِ. Whosoever practices gratitude or is grateful, they do so for their own good. I said, wait a minute. I just said, thank you, Hala. Thank you, Sabina. Why is that good for me? Why is it not good for the listener? Remember, the Quran is not saying that it's not good for the listener, because words of appreciation are like music to our ears. We want to hear that we are appreciated. That just makes us feel better. But the idea of when you express gratitude, the belief here is that you're thinking of the good that's happened to you. Not that because you are blind of all the negativity and the fact that your life is imperfect and something is missing. But look, I can either focus my energy, time on that, or I can say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed me in different ways. And I just choose to focus on the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon me. Not because I don't see that, but the idea here is that where would I want to focus that energy, that time, and that effort of mine? And I believe with these little things, they speak about showing kindness. You know, oxytocin, that's my favorite, absolute favorite hormone. These are hormones that we call them angelic hormones. There are 4 of them. But what it is that these are hormones that our body releases when you feel good, and especially when you either carry out an act of kindness or you actually be a witness to an act of kindness. That just releases or increases the release of oxytocin in your body. You know, holding a baby, for example, you know, you hold that little baby and you cuddle with that little baby, there is oxytocin that's released. If you go to the hospital, you know, with kids who have been born before their time, dads are encouraged. Go to the hospital, be topless, and just put your son on your, you know, skin to skin contact. What's going on? Why do you do that? Say, well, you know what? It releases oxytocin, which is going to help in the idea of them growing better. It also happens when a mother is breastfeeding her baby. What's going on? Oxytocin is being released. So now we look into this and say, acts of kindness, acts of gratitude, healthy relationships, paying attention to your words, recognizing the power of your thoughts. These would all be ways, you know, to exercise our mental fitness.
MashaAllah, thank you. We have one more question for you in the chat box, please. Can you talk a little about the connection with mental health and substance abuse?
Yes, so substance abuse is seen as, so there are 2 ways of looking into this. There is substance abuse in response to mental health, okay? And we refer to this as a poor coping mechanism. Young kids who come to me, 2 questions I usually ask them. I ask, if they come to me and say that I've got problems with anxiety, I do this, and I usually ask if you smoke marijuana. 90% of the time, these kids report they do smoke marijuana. Talking about Muslim kids right now, okay? And what happened is that marijuana does work. Marijuana is a substance, by the way. It may be legal, but it is still a form of drugs. Alcohol is legal. It is a form of drugs as well. So what we see here is that this is a poor coping mechanism. It works temporarily, but then when the anxiety goes away, when it comes back, it is going to come back with more intensity. So there is that substance use or abuse in response to mental illness. I have anxiety and the only thing that calms me down is when I smoke. Or I started smoking. And when I don't smoke, I get very anxious. So now what we see here is that it was used to deal with the anxiety. And now the absence of it is causing more anxiety. Or as they say, you know, and remember with all of these substances, believe me, they only work temporarily, but they make the problem worse. So the saying goes, initially a man takes a glass. We're talking about a glass of alcohol right now. By the way, this is tea, just to, actually it's coffee. They say that initially a man takes a glass, and then the glass takes a glass, and then eventually the glass takes the man. What has happened here is that your body is going to build tolerance. Your body, you know, the amount of alcohol that you're drinking is just not going to be giving you the same kick that it gave you. So what happens is that now you need to drink more, you need to smoke more, and that's just going to, that is the road to addiction at that point.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all you do. I would like to thank the AMAC team, Sabina, Muhyiddin, and Ramziya Sulaiman. We are going to be sending out a mental health survey. Please, everyone, remember to take it. It is in the chat box. Are we putting it in the chat box? Okay, we're working on putting it in the chat box. For now, I would like to share my screen. Please, for those of you online, take a screenshot. This is Sheikh Yassir Fazagas' information. This is a way you can contact him, make an appointment. I'll leave that on the screen for now for you guys to take a screenshot. Here's more information for you all to take a screenshot. If you need any resources or information needed from any of our webinars or any resource that you may need, you can call our hotline. It's a confidential hotline, and you will be given resources that you can contact. And there is the MRS email as well. And I'd like to put this up as we end off. I hope you agree, Sheikh Fazaga, with me. I actually shared this with my friends today, and I got a thumbs up from all because, yes, I think a good cup of coffee with friends goes a long way. But again, everyone, please go ahead and click on the survey and take our mental health survey. We would really, really appreciate it. I would really like to thank you again, Sheikh Fazaga, for all that you do and for coming on Muslim Resource Services. We can talk to you all night. We would love to have you back, inshallah, and do another webinar in the future. But for now, I really want to thank you and thank everyone that joined us today.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you for what you do. I would love to. You let me know when, inshallah, and we'll be there.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you all.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you, Sheikh Fazaga. This was excellent. And for everyone, just know that we have recorded this, and it's on AMAC's Facebook page, but it will be on AMAC's website under MRS. All our previous webinars with MRS are posted there. So share it once it's out, so as many people can see it and benefit from it.
It'll be on YouTube, on Facebook as well. Like us on YouTube. Thank you.
Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you. Salam. Thank you all for being here.
Okay. I stopped the